Hello everybody, it's day 3 of Unit 7 on meteorology, and today I'm going to be covering a couple Regents questions that was associated with this diagram that's giving us the temperature and precipitation in 2 cities in the Northern Hemisphere. So let's take a look. I'm going to read the instructions just because there is some information that will come in handy when we're looking at the graphs associated with these 2 cities. So it says the question below is from the June 2011 Earth Science Regents exam. All questions in this lesson are adjusted from New York State Regents. The map shows a view of Earth from above the North Pole. I'm going to take a timeout right there, and I'm going to have my globe here that we all know. Earth is tilted on its 23.5 degree axis, but you'll see that in the middle of our map, the North Pole, 90 degrees north latitude, is in the center. So we're looking at the Earth from this perspective right now. And we'll see that Reykjavik and Yakuts are pretty close to this North Pole. They're above the 60 degree north latitude line. I will continue reading the directions. Points on the map indicate the positions of Reykjavik, Iceland, and Yakutsk, Russia. The graphs show average monthly air temperature, which is the line graph, and the amount of precipitation, which is the bar graph for both locations. So make sure that you know this line graph corresponds to our axis on the left for air temperature in degrees Celsius, and the bar graph on the bottom for both cities corresponds to the amount of precipitation that they receive on average in centimeters. So just to give you an idea about what Yakutsk is like, it's one of the coldest cities on Earth. And if we look at some of the winter months, you'll see that the average temperature is around negative 40 degrees Celsius, December, January, February. So if we look in the ESRT at these temperature scales, you'll see that negative 40 degrees Celsius is actually also negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't think it's ever been, maybe it's been that cold in New York, but definitely not on average. So it's very, very cold in Yakutsk. In the summer months, in June, July, and August, it looks like it gets to be about 20 degrees Celsius. So for us, it's about room temperature, about 68 degrees. So that's what it's like in Yakutsk. Let's take a look at some of these questions and some of the other resources in the ESRT. So 56 says, write the 2-letter weather map symbol for an air mass that originates over Yakutsk. So on page 13, we have our table of air masses. You'll notice that Yakutsk, well, it's forming on a continent. It's not forming near any bodies of water, and it's fairly close to the pole. So the best option here would be continental polar. 57, explain why Reykjavik has cooler summers and warmer winters than Yakutsk. So it doesn't get too warm in the summertime and it doesn't get too cold in the winter. And the reason for that is because how are these 2 cities different? They're both at the same latitude. The difference is that unlike Yakutsk, who is not near any water, Reykjavik is on an island that is surrounded by water, and water has a very high specific heat. So as a result, during the summertime, the cooler water is going to help keep the temperature from getting too warm, and vice versa. In the wintertime, the water will feel a little bit warmer than the air temperature, so that water will actually warm the air and make it less prone to changing climate. So if it's close to the water, we're going to see cooler summers, warmer winters, and there will be less of a difference throughout the year. Describe one-way yearly precipitation in Yakuts differs from that in Reykjavik. So this one's asking us to look at the bar graph. So if we look at the bar graph, there's a couple different ways that we can compare and contrast these. First, I would say right off the bat, it appears that Yakuts is not receiving as much precipitation over the course of the year. Because if this is about 10 centimeters, then halfway is about 5. It looks like in July, in their month of heaviest precipitation, they get around 5 centimeters, whereas in Iceland, they're getting that almost on average every month, whereas in some months they're getting close to maybe 8 or 9 centimeters. So those are 2 different ways that we can compare the precipitation in the 2 cities. And then for this last question, identify one warm and one cool ocean current that would affect the climate of Iceland. Well, we can just go here to the map on surface currents in the ESRT, and we would just need to remember where Iceland is. So if you remember, Iceland is on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. A lot of these concepts kind of keep coming back and forth from unit to unit, and Iceland is going to be right up over here. So the currents that would affect Iceland would include, so warm currents and cool currents. We can say either the North Atlantic current, we can say the Norwegian current, and we can say for our cooler current, the East Greenland current. Those would be possible answers for that one. Two more questions of review taking a look at this. So if we were to compare and contrast the amount of precipitation for both cities, what do you think is the cause of the difference? So before we compared how proximity to water would affect the temperature, right? If Reykjavik is close to the water, there won't be as big of a difference. If Yakuts is far away from the water, we're going to see these vast differences in temperature. But for the precipitation, what's happening? Well, if more water is around and more water is entering the atmosphere, then we're going to expect there to be more precipitation in that area too. For Yakuts, think of that air mass that we said was there before, a continental polar air mass. So if it's continental polar air, continental means that it's going to be drier air as it is. And if it's polar, we can expect cool weather or cool air, and cool air cannot hold as much moisture. And it would also create higher pressure areas, which would bring the air down and not up. There needs to be some warm and rising air in order to create precipitation. Compare and contrast the monthly temperatures for both cities. What do you think is the cause of this? Well, we said this a lot, right? We can talk about the proximity to water or not for those two. One thing that you couldn't say here is the latitude. Like a lot of times, if we're closer to the equator, it's warmer. If we're further from the equator, it's cooler. But in this case, it actually gave us cities with two relatively equal latitudes. So that wouldn't be one answer. And that last question, how does the winter season differ in each city? So the winter seasons, we're still in the northern hemisphere, so the seasons aren't reversed. They're going to have the same season of winter, which according to their temperatures is going to be December, January, February. How is this different? Well, in Yakuts, it looks like they have a significantly lower air temperature, and we can also discuss the amount of precipitation that both cities are experiencing in those winter months as well. So it looks like Iceland is getting much more precipitation, most likely in the form of snow, whereas Yakuts is getting significantly less precipitation. I hope this video was helpful. Good luck.